Hello and welcome to Pod of Ages, a League of Legends esports podcast for fans by fans from two League of Legends esports fans. I am joined as always by my lovely co-host Linda. How are you, Linda?
I'm good.
Yeah?
Yeah, well, I mean, the weather is like, it gets dark at 3 p.m., so maybe I'm not really good, but I'm trying to tell myself and visualize that it's not as bad as it actually is.
And Linda, you are in Sweden.
Yes.
And I didn't know this about Sweden. Maybe you listeners do because you are more worldly than I am. But you have just like periods of the year where it's dark all the time?
Yes. So we're entering that right now.
And that's just like okay?
I mean, it's like, you gotta get through it.
It's just wild to me.
Right, so it's like the sun comes up around 8 a.m. and then it starts going down at like 3 p.m. or something. Sometimes earlier.
That said, I forgot to introduce myself. I am Cathy. I am at Textdoll on Twitter, and Linda is at iCrystalization on Twitter. You guys know this. I don't know why I say this every time. It's not like we actually get new listeners. I'm just kidding. We love you all.
Yes.
So since the last time you and I talked, World Finals happened.
Yep.
And FPX won! Yay! I would say that this was probably not unexpected. I think for the finals to be FPX versus G2, like in the realm of possibilities, this probably wouldn't give you $1 million payout if you were betting for it. But it was a 3-0. This is not a spoiler. If you haven't watched it so far, like you really shouldn't be listening to this.
Spoiler alert. FPX wins 3-0.
I think in the last couple of Worlds Finals have been 3-0s, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think the last one that didn't was 2016, right?
Yep, the Samsung and the SKT one. That went the whole distance.
It went the whole distance. So I guess we can start there, and then we're going to go into a second topic, which I don't really know how to describe what our second topic is going to be. It's like talking about regionalism and nationalism and imports, which is a thorny topic, but Linda and I really wanted to do this.
Yes.
And introduce that. But first on World's Finals, I would say that I was really excited that FPX got to play. I was really excited that we got to see the FPX that we were expecting, right? Which is like Tien and Crisp totally popping off, Doinb getting to be his roaming Nautilus self, a lot of really fun team fights. But I do admit to being disappointed because I did really like G2 for a lot of this year, and I felt like there were just parts of the game where this was not the G2 I expected to see. And again, I'm not an analyst, so I don't know if G2 didn't show up or if it was just that FPX was so much better on the day. But like, I don't know if you remember, I was actually trying to revisit this series before we recorded this. Game 2 was just like a total bust. Like, it was like 15 minutes in and they were like 10K up. It was, there was just like nothing. It was fun. It was still fun to watch because these are still two really good teams, but what?
Wasn't there one part where G2 kind of just ran it down, like mid? They're just like,
yeah.
And then they just ran it down. And you're like, okay.
And I don't know. I don't remember if that was like game 2 because by that point, what were they going to do, right? I think like LWX was like fed off his face. And at that point, it's, I think he was on Kaisa. And it just was like, what else were G2 going to do except into it? But I don't know. I don't want to say like I was disappointed in any particular part of G2, but it was not the final I would have expected if you rewound 3 months and you told me the final was going to be G2 versus FPX.
Right, like most people had G2 winning against FPX, except for Chad and Raz.
Yes.
The only two valid men in the world, as we can see. But the funny thing is that I was in Taiwan while the finals was playing. So I was like in the middle of a night market with my friends. And I told them earlier, like, hey guys, so my nerd stuff, the finals, it's going to be today. So like if I just chill in the back and watch it, will you guys roam around? Will that be fine? And they were like, yeah, totally. And then and then just came back. I'm like, okay, I'm here. And they're like, oh, it's a break now? I'm just like, no, it's over. And they're like, what? I was like, yeah, that's about it. That's all we got.
They did try to make it a little bit longer for you because Game 2 did have a classic LPL pause.
Yes, of course.
So, just that little bit of sprinkling of taste so that we did know we were dealing with LPL and not any other region.
Exactly. But yeah, I was surprised as well that it was going to be a 3-0 and not just like a super competitive. The first game was pretty competitive, but then the second two were just like, what? Like they just died. I don't know why. Like they just, I don't know. Since, I'm no analyst either, but I looked around on like what a lot of the real legit analysts said. And they were like, oh, this is what happens when, G2 faces a team that has a very good early game. And they also know how to close out the game, unlike SKT, who had like a lot of leads, but then they fumbled them and G2 could like come back.
Yeah. And I do also think, I'm trying to remember who said this, but I think it was during the pause in Game 2, there was kind of a discussion of, this is what happens when you meet a team that also has really good mechanics. Like part of what G2 has always been able to do is they get themselves caught in a tight situation, and then they do, I wouldn't say like in a mechanical outplay, but they have really great mechanics, and they also make really great team decisions. And so I think that allowed them during the year to seem like this really great team. But FPX also has that. So maybe it was just they met, I don't know, maybe they just met a team that they couldn't do that to. And that's what we get.
But I mean, I think it was pretty funny because on Twitter, it felt like, or at least the people I follow on Twitter, it felt like most people had just like accepted G2 as the winners. Like G2 made it final, so now, finally we're gonna get a European Worlds winner and da-da-da, and I'm getting my wallet ready for those G2 World skins. And then FPX are like, hello, we're here, we exist. And here we are.
So let's talk about this because, so there's two kind of narratives that we could talk about here. One is that G2 went the way of RNG from last year, which is that they won everything except for Worlds.
Right.
And because of that, I know with RNG, and we've talked about this before, it was like nobody ever talked about RNG again afterwards, after they didn't make it to finals and they didn't win. It was almost like their year didn't count for anything, even though up until really when they got kicked out, they were considered the strongest team in the world. So there's that, and whether or not you think that applies to G2. But I also kind of want to ask you this other question about the narrative of FPX, which is that in my memory, after Rift Rivals, FPX kind of had this breakout performance where they were the team that everybody, sort of really remembered. And I remember this especially because when we were at LCS, FPX was was in fact an LPL team that people knew of, right? Whether that was to say that they actually didn't think FPX was that good or whatever, that's a separate question. But the reality is, it was unexpected to me that we would be sitting at LCS with people who didn't watch LPL who still knew who FPX was, and still knew who the team was. So there's this other narrative that I'm thinking back now, maybe this is just in my head, about the steady rise of FPX, which we've just kind of forgotten because there was this big G2 narrative. And I wonder how you feel about either of those two stories that we end up telling because of Worlds.
I think that FPX has done a really good job at marketing themselves to a Western audience. Like, just Doinby alone brings in so many fans, because not only does he have a lot of wacky picks and he's not the conventional mid laner, some would even say he's the worst mid laner at Worlds, but as we could all see, he's totally crying into his championship trophy. But anyways, so he built up a lot of personality, and then like I think that FPX are they're very lovable guys, and like I can see it a lot easier because I know Chinese and I have like access to Weibo, so I can see that they're like very trolly, if you can say it like that. But the FPX Twitter and also Doinby's own Twitter, I think they did a really good job at least highlighting one player out of the roster and be like, hey, this guy's very fun. And that was with the, the Doinby, was that TikTok thing he did? Like that dance thing?
I don't know if it was TikTok, but it was certainly a video that he ended up putting on Twitter.
Right. And then like it got huge and all the casters started doing it, and then Cap's dad, I think, joined in as well.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
I've always felt that they have the ability to make their stars shine because they have such personable players. And then, people got into FPX because of Doinby's funny picks. Because I remember, even though LPL lost their Rift rivals, FPX was like the only LPL team to pick up a win. And when they went up against Griffin in like the finals, they had Pantheon mid, which was like, whoa, what? Pantheon mid? And then they won. So everyone was like, oh, okay, Doinby. And then he always pops up because he builds like these weird builds that you're not supposed to do, but he somehow does and makes it work. And he just like, I think it's because, yeah, and then when you look into Doinby, you start noticing the team around him, and you notice like, wow, Tian's actually like a monster, and Crisp is really good. And LWX is like, he's the steady AD carry over there. And then nobody remembers Gimgoon. But Gimgoon exists. Okay, he's the top laner.
And he was really good in game one. I feel guilty because I have been one of those people who's like, who is Gimgoon? But he was, he did his job and then some in this game versus G2, which to me was really... because I really do like Wonder as a top laner, right? I love a self-sufficient top laner. They're the best. But Gimgoon really, he survived solo kills. He went in. He has a 5-0-12 scoreline in game one, which is incredible.
And I think that's the thing that makes FPX such a fun team. It's that a lot of analysts got... I'm not going to name any names, but some LS analysts out there got very angry at their victory because they're like, well, they don't play the game correctly. They should have
really?
won.
Did he really say that?
But he went on like this mega rant about how Doinby still isn't good, even though they won and all that, because he's like, oh, well, Tien and Chris facilitate him. And then like, okay, but every top team have their jungler and support work together. And it's not like Doinby doesn't do anything. He roams around the map. He does everything. He shots calls as well. But like, it's just because he doesn't play it in the way that people want him to play it. So like, he doesn't push the waves or whatever, or he doesn't have good statistics. And he's talked about it as well. He's like, yeah, I can kind of get it that people don't see me as a good mid laner because they only look at the statistics. But I do a lot of things in game. And that's why he's also thankful to ProView, because it's like, now people can see like what I'm actually doing. And I feel like it's the same thing with like Gimgoon, in that, he's not a standout top laner. He's not the shy, and he knows it himself. He's like, I'm not one of the best top laners. I don't see myself as the best, even though we won. But he does his role. And I feel like FPX is just this team, like 5 people who do their role well, and they work well together. And they may not be the most standout players, except like you could say Tien and Crisp are the best in their roles. But like, they may not have the best in every role, but they work really well as a team.
Absolutely. And I think this is one of those situations where I don't think the team would in fact work the same if you took Doinby out of the game and you gave them whoever you think is the best mid laner in the world, right? Like insert whatever name in there that's not Doinby. I don't actually think this team would be as good, because I feel like part of what makes them really good is that Doinby is not, he's not a Caps, right? He's not I'm trying to think of another mid laner.
Like a rookie or a faker.
A rookie,
like
there we go. Yeah. Like he plays the game that he plays, and it works really well because the rest of the team gets it. And I'm thinking this, of course, is not something that somebody from FPX said, but there was an interview that Impact from Team Liquid gave, and I think it was to Ashley Kong. And she asked him what kind of top laner he wanted to be. And he said he wanted to be reliable, like a warm bowl of soup, like a warm bowl of like Korean stew,
That
and he,
feels
like,
so Impact, yeah.
Right. And like that's what he wanted you to think of when you thought of him. And I kind of think of that with like Gimgoon, or in even some cases like Doinby, even though Doinby is a little bit weirder. But, he's it's not like you would go to FPX to see Gimgun play or even
Right.
Doinbi play, right? Or even LWX. To some extent, if you want the flashy highlight reel play, you're not clipping together Gimgun plays. But without him, like, that's not a team. Just like without Doinbi, that's not a team.
Right.
And so I think in some ways that did make them different from G2, because I think with G2 you could argue that those were some of the best players in the world in those roles, and certainly the best player in LEC in those roles, right? Which I don't think is true of FPX.
Right.
Like, I don't, maybe Tian now, I don't
Yes.
know, maybe Crisp now, you would say that, but certainly not of everybody at the time.
Exactly. And I think it's just that's why it makes it so fun to see kind of how polarizing their victory is. Because when IG won, a lot of people were like, yeah, but these are the best players
Right.
in their role. Like, you got Rookie, you got Jack Love, you got Ning was really good back then.
The Shy,
Right,
like,
the Shy.
probably the best top laner in the world at
Right.
that point.
Exactly. And then, Bao Lan, he's there, but he's doing his best.
No, don't say that. Don't say that.
He did his best, and like
He tried.
okay, but he did have a like standout Worlds performance, so I can't
Yes,
say anything
yeah.
there. But like, and also the way IG won was very fun, I guess, for most people, because I feel like most people still think of League of Legends as this 1v9 game, or like one player can take over and create leads, and that was kind of like IG, because they were so strong in the laning phase. They just like smacked you in the face, and they created their own leads.
Right.
And so, like, by the time you got out of laning phase, it was kind of like too late already. And then you have FPX where, like, Doinbi knows he's not good in his laning phase. Like, he's
Right.
serviceable, but he's not the best. So, like, I'll roam instead. And he does that. He roams to top, he roams to bot, he helps out his team. And he said it himself. He's like, I'm not a player like Rookie and Faker who, their strengths are that they can create their own leads and guide a team. He's like, I help my teammates. And that's it.
Right.
Like, I try to get them ahead. And sometimes that means I get pushed back, or sometimes I get ahead with them, but it doesn't matter. Like, at the end of the day, I feel like FPX really, they are like this new version of League of Legends, which is, it's a team game now. It's not as easy to 1v9 as like Season 3 and Season 2 and whatever. Like, now you actually have to play with your team, and you have to make up for your weaknesses.
Which I think is so weird, because I felt like that was the world I lived in
Right.
2016 and 2017. And so now that you're saying, like, oh, this, and I'm sitting there being like, hasn't this been a revelation that we've had for years? But then I do think, because of the way IG played, like, you're right, it was very much like, suddenly the Shy is 1v3ing, and why did you do that? Well, I don't know, but he's still alive and you're screwed.
Yeah.
Whereas, like, a lot of, again, going back to FPX and G2, I was only able to review the first 2 games, but it was a lot of trading, right? Like, FPX didn't have the issue IG did, where you killed one of them and then they, like, all glommed on you and then you were dead. Like, they would be doing they were able to trade up in a lot of cases, and it wasn't just like suddenly somebody smashed because you decided to kill Balan, which was a bad idea. I enjoyed watching FPX play. I hope that they're good next year too.
Yeah. I hope so as well.
Right? Like, and again, I want to say to G2, I think they were really great this year. And I also don't think they were the polar opposite of FPX. Like, a lot of what made G2 good also was that they had clearly a lot of trust in each other and a lot of really great on the fly team making decisions, which I think, if you look at other teams, and especially if you watch any like behind the scenes documentaries or you look at the interviews, a lot of the discussion was like, when you make one bad decision, everybody should be making that bad decision, right? And like, that's like something G2 I think really exemplifies. Like, if you make a decision, make the decision. Don't two of you split and like do something stupid. And like, okay, so what was that game? Was it against Damwon where TL made like some monumental throw at a dragon?
Oh God.
Do you remember that?
Yeah. It was like, when they had that really weird comp where Jensen went Anivia and like Impact Sion, and they were like, oh, we're gonna
and they were doing really well.
Exactly.
And then they like threw at a dragon.
Right.
And I'm sorry I keep bringing up TL examples, but unfortunately, like, that being the team that I watch the most content for.
Unfortunately, we are chained to the Team Liquid life.
But so in the Honda documentary that they made, kind of reviewing their year, Doublelift was saying, that's a decision I would make again, because we all made that decision, right? Like at the time, that seemed like the best decision to make. And yeah, the results were disastrous, but we all made that decision and that was it. And I kind of feel that way about G2. Like that is an example of a new way of playing League of Legends that I think really came into being from last year into this year.
Right. I feel like G2 and IG are very much, they just make these miracle plays. And you're like, wow. Like, there's no way they're gonna come back from this. And then they come back from it. You're like, okay, well, I guess. And I guess. Those two are those I guess teams.
Yeah, for sure.
And I think that, before IG, it was just like SKT won. Or Samsung won. Like, it was LCK teams that won Worlds. And LCK teams, it was like, the stereotype that LCK teams, they play slow, methodical, you get a few kills, but then they're up in objectives and la-da-da-da-da, and then IG wins, and it's just brute forcing and like lane dominance. And G2, they also have, welcome to my lane kingdom, that kind of stuff. So I feel like their playstyles are very appealing to the audience, and also kind of shifted the whole narrative of how to play the game. And then you go to finals and everyone thinks, well then, since G2 have more superior laners, they're gonna smash FPX. But then FPX just like, okay, well, we're gonna not say that G2 didn't play as a team, but FPX were just like, we're gonna coordinate more. Like, we're gonna roam together. We're gonna be on top side, and we're gonna be bot side, and we're gonna do this and that. And if you take an objective, we're gonna take an objective.
Exactly, yeah.
I feel like that threw people off. Not to say that FPX aren't bloodthirsty as well, but they just, like you said, they don't unga bunga dive in like Invictus Gaming and then die or win, depending on the day.
So, okay, let's back up several steps. In the grand scheme of games at Worlds, especially Worlds Finals, where would you put this? Because I think, like, let me just say my personal thing, which is, yes, sorry, I'm totally biased, but I still feel like the best of 5 that was ever played at Worlds not finals, but at Worlds is Rox versus SKT in 2016.
Right.
So like, to me, like, that's my bar, right?
Yeah.
And I've talked about this before on Twitter, which is that it is such a good best of 5 that every time I go back and watch it, I expect different outcomes.
Right.
Knowing, as I do, that it won't happen. But you watch it and it's like beautiful. It's almost like scripted. So it's so beautiful. It's so cinematic. So like, I know nothing in my heart will ever get there. So like, let's just throw that out. But think about all the semis, even semis this year, right? Like, in my view, I thought FPX versus IG was like the most interesting best of 5.
Right. I feel like that was the true finals, honestly.
Right. And no disrespect to G2. I'm not saying that they didn't play well. I'm just saying the unga bunga that you were talking about.
Right.
There was so much of that. And it was so entertaining. And it was like exactly what I thought of. Like, if you backed up 3 months and you told me FPX versus IG, like, that was the best of 5 that I expected out of those two teams. That felt good.
Like, that was LPL.
So,
like, that was LPL.
Yeah. Right. So, I mean, I would, like, in my head, I think I enjoyed this more than, sorry, Samsung, when Samsung beat SKT for finals in 2017. I think this is about how much I enjoyed IG versus Fnatic last year.
Right.
I think I liked SKT versus Samsung 2016 more, but I don't know. Like, how do you feel?
I feel the same way. Like, if we're just basing it off of World's finals, because like,
or semifinals, if you can think of others that you liked.
I mean, nothing's gonna top the SKT Rox one. That was just like the misfortune pick, and then they're putting in Bengi and everything's like, whoa.
Exactly, right?
The Ash arrow, like, there's too many moments in like one game alone, in the pick and ban alone. So like, yeah, but I mean, and this is also because personal pain, but IGKT, I guess, for one.
Oh God, no, but that wasn't good. Like, you don't want to go back and rewatch that, right?
Okay, that's
like,
true. That's true.
Right? I want a best of 5 that you actually would
That
watch
just
and
hurts
revisit.
me. Yeah, that's true. That one just hurt. That hurted, as they say. That one just hurt me. Okay, ones that I want to revisit. The thing is, I feel that most semifinals, like 2017. Oh wait, it wasn't even semifinals. That was a quarterfinal, IG and KT. But after that, it was just stomps. I feel like that was stomps. Yeah.
Yeah.
So like, I feel like so far, maybe it's just because like 2016 Worlds was like my first Worlds that I actually sat down and watched. Even though, and I wasn't a super proper EDG fan yet, so it didn't hurt as much when I was like, why is EDG bombing in groups? And then fast forward 3 months, I'm like, oh god, this is actually awful. Oh my god, yeah. But I mean, 2016 Worlds, like, I like this. The semifinals was, as we all know, legendary, iconic. But I also really like the finals between like Samsung Galaxy and SKT.
Right.
Because it went the full distance, and then you had the storylines like Ambition coming back, this old man leading his team of youngsters, and like everyone was fairly new. You got Crown was like dominating in the mid lane, and I felt like, because I remember it was about to be a 3-0, and in game 3 it went like 50 minutes or something, because they managed to turn it around, and then it went to game 4, Samsung wins, and then like I just remember game 3, I think it's like the winning fight is that Ambition steals the Elder Drake while Samsung takes the Baron, and then they like, after that they won. I don't remember
it that closely, but I believe you.
Because I just remember, I think it's like, I don't know if it was Kobe or something, but he was like, Ambition steals the Elder Drake, and we're going into a game 4, and we got a series, and I just like, I like that. And then after that, it's just been 3-0s. And, even if they're close 3-0s, you can't really feel much, because at the end of the day, it's a 3-0.
Yeah. And I don't want to make this a whole like, well, if you have a full best of 5, it's more exciting every time. I don't think that's necessarily true, but it did feel bad when this year the second game was just like such an it was so obviously over. And I felt like when even at the first game there was a point where I was like, well, I think this is mostly over, but I don't want to ever say that against G2, because who knows, like something could happen. So like after those 2 games, it was kind of like, well, I don't know where this is going. Like it doesn't seem like so I don't want to always say that the best of 5s that go the full distance are always the best one, but certainly it feels like the last couple of finals and even semifinals have just not been as exciting. And I'm not suggesting that teams like throw or something to give me a more exciting game, but I don't know.
Yeah. And I mean, it's also funny how all the games were 3-1 this World.
Except for the finals.
Except for finals, yeah. But like how knockout stage was basically 3-1, 3-1.
Yeah.
But I believe for a fact, FPX versus IG would have gone the full distance if the Shy and Jacklove did not decide to stab Rook in the back.
Oh my god.
To just stab him right in the back.
Oh my god. Wait, so I believe that happened when we weren't recording, so maybe we like could back up. I forgot that we didn't even talk about that. I felt so bad, and I hate pointing to like a particular person or a particular team fight and be like, you lost it for us, but like, what in the world
was that?
What in the world? It was like they lost their minds.
Yeah, and it was just like, oh my god, that part. Yeah, it's like you got your 2 fed carries, and they just run around a corner, and they don't know what's on the other side of the corner, and then they die. And I'm like, what? It was what?
And it'd be like one thing if it was just the Shy, or it'd be one thing if it was just Jacula, but it wasn't. It wasn't.
Both of them.
It was both of you. Like both of you did this to us.
And especially after Rookie did that like heroic performance on Lucian, where he took the inhib, and he was like, okay, and then he like pulled them back into the game. He's like, I'm not losing this. And then, in game 4, they were like, yeah, you are gonna lose it. And he was like, dang.
That still hurts.
Yeah,
that still hurts. I really truly felt like they could. You're right. I truly felt like they could have gone the distance to 5 games. I don't know if I thought that IG was gonna win.
Yeah, but it would have been fun to see.
But it would have been so much fun. Yeah,
I hope
that one hurt.
I hope they like I don't know. I hope they bought him a cake or something where it says, "We're sorry. I'm sorry, rookie. I'm so sorry."
Rookie's not angry, he's just disappointed.
Exactly. That's the thing. Like when they lost that game in mic check, he just says, "Ah, guys, you worked hard."
I know.
And I'm like,
that's the worst.
he's not even mad at you. He's just sad.
Like when he went to the conference and he was, the post-game conference.
yeah,
and
yeah,
it was literally like the epitome of like, we're not angry at ourselves. We're just disappointed that we didn't show you. like it literally was just like sad dad.
Exactly. Oh, Rookie he's a sad dad.
But yeah, I do hope that FPX is going to be good because like one of the sad things about IG, even though they made it to semis, was like they weren't great in 2019.
Yeah. No. They were it was like watching, that gif of a dog that's like crawling and then it starts standing up and walking away.
No, I don't know this.
So team, like a lot of esports Twitter uses it when a team looks like it's about to lose but then they win. So it's like this dog and its hind legs, I think, or like the back legs are dragging on the floor and it looks like it's injured and then all of a sudden it just stands up and starts running. And I feel like that kind of was IG, except just like they were just, I don't know, like I never felt confident in them. Like when they won, I was like, okay, that's IG. But I never for a second thought they're gonna win Worlds. Like they made it to semifinals. That's impressive by itself.
Yeah.
Like that's already super good. But it is kind of sad how they kind of, like after MSI, thank you Team Liquid, but also why? After they lost to Team Liquid, they kind of just like free fell down into the abyss. So I really do hope that FPX at least try and hang in there for another Worlds appearance. At least, try to show that this isn't just a one-time Worlds wonder curse thing.
Yeah, because I mean the same thing happened with Samsung 2017.
Right.
Right? Like they were not that good. I would even go so far as to say they were a kind of a bad team for a lot of 2018. And then, IG kind of like went boom after MSI. I feel like SKT was really kind of the only team who hasn't had that curse. Although, of course, they won in 2013 and then didn't make it back to World in 2014. But outside of that, I felt like they've all, during their three-peat era, it was fine.
Right.
But yeah, I hope FPX can turn it around after recent history, and remain good so that next year we can be like, oh, they're coming to defend their crown in a way that like really means it. Like we could really put some, feeling in that.
Right. And it's not just like, oh, they're here to defend their crown, kind of. Haha.
Yeah. Like what we did with IG, we're like, well, are they even going to make it?
That would have been the worst. There was like, when they were in the gauntlet stage, their fans were like crying on Weibo, like, please, you have to win this. I don't care if you crawl to Worlds, you have to win. Do you know how embarrassing it would be if like you lost, but you have to show up to carry the trophy?
It would be so embarrassing.
And then you just leave.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
Whew. Oh, and we didn't even mention how awesome was the opening ceremony.
Oh yeah, the opening ceremony. I do feel like I think it was great because I just feel like League of Legends has kind of set the bar for opening ceremonies. Like, instead of just having an artist perform, they're like, we're just gonna incorporate everything with each other.
Yeah.
But I am a bit sad because I know that I think it's actually you who showed me there's this video clip of someone who was at the venue who filmed like the opening performance, and the particles and effects look so much better in that video, while in the opening ceremony, I don't know if it was the lighting or something, but at some points I feel like it was very dark or the camera kind of like didn't focus on the right things.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah. But like I like the whole thing all in all. But I feel like, I get also like if you compare it with the KDA performance, like KDA was out in the open, so it's like very light and like you focus on the AR figures and you're like, whoa, what's going on? Same thing actually with the finals in the Bird Nest, where it was also in the open. It was like really light and the dragon just pops in and just like whoa. Yeah. While in Paris, I feel like I don't know. After I watched that clip on YouTube of the person who like films it from the venue, I was like, oh, we could have had so much more impact, I guess, if it was like filmed in a different way, or they had the lighting in a different way.
Interesting. Yeah, I think I agree with that. Like, I think there were times where it was really dark, and I did kind of miss was it last year where they had like the two stages? Do you remember that like met in the center?
Oh yeah.
The
During the
moving
Rise performance,
stages?
yeah, they were moving.
Yeah.
Ah,
And it was unexpected. Like, I didn't know what was going on, but they had the two teams and then suddenly like they came together, and that was
exactly.
amazing. But I do think, like you said, I do think Riot has done some of the best opening ceremonies for an esport event in the way that they integrate the players into the ceremony and into the performances. And this time, unlike last time where they had the AR figures that were sort of separate from the real performers, in this case, they tried very hard, I think, to make you feel like the performers were in fact interacting with their AR selves, or like their AR counterparts, which I thought was really incredible. That they were like, they're so they're so into making sure that they're like advancing every time. Like, every iteration of this has gotten better, right? Like, the first time it was just a dragon, and then the next time it was like whole people, and like this time it's like whole people in collaboration with their real people selves. Like, it was really amazing to see that. And compared to, we watched, of course, like Overwatch finals for, they don't call them season 2. What do they call it? The 2019 season, however Overwatch counts their seasons. And they had Zed and a surprise performance by Kalani. Right? But it wasn't like branded as Overwatch League, right? Like, you could have just cut that concert clip and it would have been like any concert.
Right, exactly.
But this, it was like so obviously it was about League of Legends and it was the League of Legends World Finals. So I think, kudos to them. I keep thinking like, oh, it'll get boring, and it didn't get boring. It was really fun, and I'm really glad that every single time they seem dedicated to doing this. And 2020 is in China.
Right, that's gonna be huge.
It's gonna be huge.
Like, Olympics level huge.
Maybe even more than Olympics level.
Right.
Because I refuse to believe that Tencent does not have more money than whatever the Chinese Olympic Committee does.
I fully expect Akali and Ari to just like punch me through the screen. I expect that level of immersion. That level.
I expect like a full real rift to like emerge.
Right. I expect the entire venue to be a rift. Oh, that would be really cool.
Right.
If the venue was like
so
a rift.
Cool.
Hey, Tencent, take notes of this. Make the venue a rift. The Summoner's Rift.
I've been clamoring for this for like years, actually. I really feel like Tencent could build a League of Legends theme park.
Oh my god. They totally could. Right?
Right?
Whatever. They could make like...
They don't want money. That's not my problem.
They don't...
put it out there.
They're just a small indie company who wants to...
Not Tencent. Tencent is not a small indie company.
Why would Tencent ever want more money?
I know, right? Whatever. Anyway, that's what I expect. That's what I expect out of 2020. I expect a full theme park.
And then, moving from one amusement park into another amusement park, regionalism and nationalism. Yes. That's a funny topic to talk about.
So, okay. To set the scene, I wanted to talk about this, and I'm sure, Linda, you can put in your 2 cents on this too. I feel like starting last year, but it's like pushed to the limit this year, there's been a lot of like East versus West discussion. Right. And this year, I feel like it was even cemented a little bit more because certain EU and certain NA teams decided to essentially have collaborations for Worlds. So TL and G2 had a collab, and C9 and Fnatic had a collab. And it felt like it made real this weird like marriage between like, EU and NA. Like, they hate each other until NA is inevitably kicked out. And then all of a sudden, like, everybody jumps on the EU boat and pretends that we're all one region.
Right.
And it's against the East, and I put this in quotes, even though I don't think LPL and LCK fans have this feeling at all.
Oh
Like, I don't
no.
think there's like an alliance there in any way, shape, or form.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very strange to me. It feels very one-sided as a result of that. And I cannot help feeling like part of it is because of I don't want to like go full like it's racism here, but it does feel a little bit it's like, oh well, it's because we as the fans or the players are not Asian and they are Asian, and like that's really the schism here that none of us are talking about.
Right. It feels a lot like you're othering the other side,
Yeah.
like and I put it in quotation marks as well, the East. Because
Yeah.
the LPL and the LCK have more of a friendly rivalry and sometimes like a really bloody rivalry. That's why you can just compare it to Rift Rivals. Like, NA and EU see Rift Rivals as a joke, and they think it's a waste of time. But for like the LPL and the LCK, when Rift Rivals rolls around, if you don't win that, that's like you are hurting your region's pride.
Right.
You are a scum to this nation. Okay, not on that level,
Right.
but it's like it's very
You can
serious.
swim home if you
Exactly.
lose, right? Yeah.
And if it's in China and you lose in China, then you take a lap around China. That's just how it is.
Yeah.
And then like you come to these East versus West things, like that would never happen in the LPL. I think the LPL only likes like the most respected players Faker. So it's like, okay, well if Faker wins, I guess that's fine. Like it's kind of like on that level. But
Yeah.
other than that, it's like in some cases maybe most LPL fans would root for the team that's against an LCK fan or LCK team because they're like, we don't want them to win.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree. Which is not to say that there aren't SKT fans or whatever in China, right? Like that's not
of
what
course.
we're saying. I'm saying that, and I don't know how much of this is actually driven by the fans, but definitely among the community, and especially the content creators and the community for NA and for EU, there was this feeling like, oh, well, you know, we are all somehow one region.
Right.
And I cannot escape that being like, what do you think possibly ties that region together? Like, we don't play against each other with any regularity, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, there's imports, but the imports in NA come from everywhere, not just EU. Yeah, I guess we share English in common in a way that we don't with LCK or LPL, but that's like not enough for me to feel like that we are one region. And what makes it weirder is that I don't think you ever really see this in other sports. Like, again, I don't watch a lot of sports that have an international component, but if you think of like the Olympics or if you think of the World Cup, there's
Right.
not a regional tie in there. Like, you don't like, you know, if you're like a Brazil fan, you don't then like cheer for Argentina
Right.
when Brazil loses. And the same way with like, especially in the Olympics, it's like when the US participant doesn't win, you're not like happy that somebody from Germany did.
Right, exactly. So it's just, I feel like it's very tied to esports. Like the whole, I guess it's because it's easier to tie it, because even though they say like, oh, national identities, like the national identities are not as strong as in traditional sports or as in the Olympics.
Yeah.
Like where in the Olympics you do represent your country, and this is like for the country. While in esports, I feel like it's just very, I don't know, like it's very, well, just look at like the EU mids, for example. Like people claim them to be EU, and then if they don't do well, then it's not EU mids anymore. Then they're NA mids, like that kind of thing.
Yeah. I mean, but I do want to push back on this thing where you said, okay, you don't think, I mean, I do think in recent years there has been more of an idea of nationalism. And I think in EU, like EU Masters has made that a little bit more explicit.
Right.
Because in EU you can do this thing where you have each of the national leagues and like they produce a team, which we don't have in NA, because NA does consist of more than one country, but it's not like we have like a Canadian league.
Right.
We certainly don't have like a Mexican league, right? And
Right.
so it's not like there's those three identities that then come together to be LCS. Like, that's not true. When people say NA, they really just mean America.
Right.
Even though Canadian players play in it. But I do think in recent years there has been more like of an attempt to be nationalistic. And I think Joinby plays into that in an interesting way. Rookie obviously does as well.
Yeah.
I don't know. So it worries me. It worries me. I like it too. I'm like so conflicted. I think it's great if you can have ties to esports kind of in the same way in, so in America, right? Like if you went to a particular college or you're in like say you're in Chicago, you'll like support a Chicago baseball team, right? I want that for esports, but at the same time, it just feels bad for some reason.
Yeah, but yeah, I kind of feel the same. I think okay, this might just sound crazy, but anyways, I feel like when it comes to cases like Doinby and Rookie, what's really admirable on their part is that they are from Korea, but they play
Yeah.
in China, and they've just like integrated so well into not just the LPL but just the culture around it. Like they really like being in China.
Yeah.
And so they've learned the language, they know the slang, things like that. And that's something that, so when they stand on stage maybe in Korea and like when Rookie won Worlds and he's like crying on stage in Korea and he's talking in Korean, but then he's translating it to Chinese for his
Right.
like Chinese fans. That's something
Right.
that I feel is really beautiful and something really great. Or like Doinby saying at Rift Rivals that he wants like LPL to win and things like that, I am part of LPL. That's like something great. But I feel like when sometimes esports, that's something that I feel is good about esports. That's like, because everyone should be able to play a game, like regardless of what gender or sexuality or whatever you are.
Yeah.
Because games are supposed to be this thing that kind of like bring people together. But then
Right.
I feel the same way it should be in esports. Like, it doesn't matter if you're from this country or that country. You play this game and you do it well and like join our team. But then when you do like this nationalistic spin on it, like the ugly version that I've personally felt when it comes to imports, for example, like you try to make it sound as, we're pure because we're a team that does not use any imports.
Yeah.
And that just like really rubs me the wrong way, because like then that takes away the whole, for example, Doinby a Rookie, they are imports, but
Right.
fans treat them as any old like native in quotation player because of how respectful they are and how they really are dedicated to their craft. And I feel like, when you say things, when you try to make a divide of like the pure rosters without no imports, it just creates this really weird, I don't know, it creates a weird feeling, because most of the cases the imports are Korean.
Yes.
So that makes
or
it
Asian.
like, or
Let's be
Asian,
clear,
yes.
right? Like I think yeah, you're totally right. Like I think where a lot of the nastiness comes in for me, and I'm not saying that any of the G2 players or the management or even the team necessarily is encouraging this, but there was a lot of discussion of G2 as like pure because like they're 5 players who, and none of them are imports, right?
Right.
Including their sub. Their sub was not an import either.
Exactly.
And it was like kind of put in a contrast to say like Team Liquid, where we have a mix of both imports. I'm putting this in quotes because this is not the term that Riot uses, but like naturalized imports.
Mhm.
And then Doublelift and Nick Smithy, who are actual US citizens, and thus not imports in any capacity, right?
Right.
So it's odd. It's like it feels bad because it feels like a racial purity thing, and I'm like
Right.
cringing as I say this. Like you can't see me, but I'm like shrinking into
Mhm.
my chair as I say it, and it doesn't feel good, and I don't like it. But I don't know what to say about it because development of quote unquote native talent is really important for a lasting scene. And I think we see that in North America, right? Like a lot of the new players in North America and LCS, they're not from North America, from any of the regions of North America. And that's sad. And like, I do want it to continue that we can have North American players, but it just feels like this reflection of the greater discussion we're having about like native and non-native. Just the terms are so bad.
Right.
They're bad. They're bad terms.
They're-
I don't like it.
And it's not just like this is an EU thing or whatever, because I remember very clearly when RNG were RNG now. Like RNG has their brand ever since 2017. Ever since they got Karsa and like Looper and Mata left. They had their brand of like, now we're an all Chinese team and we're like the only all Chinese team. And I'm not saying that the players were pushing this, but their boss was definitely like trying to label himself or market themselves as different from the other LPL teams. And then they started winning. Like they beat Kingzone at MSI and they won that, and then they won Asian Games, and then they won like Rift. Like they were on such a dominating spree that people, and I saw it in comments, were like, well, obviously I'm gonna cheer for RNG because they're an all Chinese team, or like they're a full
Right.
hashtags pure roster. And I'm like, and then IG won, and it was like, oh well, but
Yeah.
that's the thing. Like that kind of came to bite them back as well, because like you're spending so much time talking about like, and that's another thing that I feel, I hope people don't listen to this and think that we're just like, you should only import, or like you must have rosters with
saying.
like different players from different regions. It's just that like obviously teams should take a shot at their local talent and like try and grow the infrastructure from there. But the conversation about imports never goes around that. It's never like a nuanced conversation about what should we do to develop our leagues better so that people feel like, I have a shot at playing in NA if I'm an NA player, and orgs will take a shot at me instead of maybe another player from another region. But instead, it always goes back to import bad, import good, like that kind of thing.
Right. And that's not even like addressing, imports of all different varieties come with their own different, cultures, backgrounds. Some of them have played in other leagues before. Like Wadid is an import, right?
Right.
But he spent so much of his career playing in LEC and now LCS. So he's not the same kind of import as like when Someday was first brought over, right?
Right.
Like it's a different type of discussion. So when people are saying like, well, imports are this way or imports are that way, it's very odd. And like I also think it's okay, to me there's another exceptionally odd thing about the EU like quote unquote pure discussion, because there's a lot of countries that make up that region. And nobody is sitting around being like, oh, well, what about the cultural difference when you have like a Polish player on the same, like nobody is sitting there saying that, even though I can't off the top of my head list all the nationalities of the players in D2, but I don't think any of them like share the same nationality.
Exactly.
So like, and we don't have that discussion there, but so I just feel like it's such a loaded conversation, and I feel like a lot of times people don't realize like what they're saying when they say certain things.
Yeah.
And it's not, and I'm not saying it's intentional. I'm not saying it's anybody's fault. I'm not saying like this is like we are trying to have race purity discussions, but it often ends up feeling that way because we use like the same loaded language and we make the same generalizations that I feel like have come to define what makes me uncomfortable when we have conversations about like immigrants in America, and it feels that way. And like, not to lose sight of another thing, I do think it is a little strange, and I'm not trying to call anybody out here, when reporters or content creators then jump on the wagon of themselves representing a region. I'm not saying that you can't support a region. I'm just saying like then there's this like added boost of like, oh, we're like a Western journalist? What does that mean?
Right.
Like, right?
No,
it's weird.
No, sir, you are not a Western journalist. You're a dude who writes about video games, all right? Just calm down now.
And it's also, and again, I think it is odd because I don't think like any of the LCK or LPL like regional reporters feel the same way. They're not like, oh, well, we're like Eastern journalists, like,
right,
like
exactly.
like there's that doesn't. So it is like a very like something about the LEC and LCS relationship that feels very loaded, and maybe that's just because that's what I am familiar with.
And I feel like, I don't know, because like I don't want to get too political, I say, as this entire episode has
this
been.
Entire section is extremely political.
Yes, but it's also like the current political climate is very tense. Yeah. And people turn to esports, for example, as a distraction from that, because you don't want to, sometimes you need to get distracted. You can't just be in the machine at all times. You're going to go insane if you do that and just keep up to date with all the world news, because then you're just going to feel awful about it. And then you turn to esports maybe for distractions, and then you click it open and it feels like a tamer but still like a reflection of what's going on in the world. And it's just like, I thought that it wouldn't get as bad, but and it's really sad to say, but like the more successful NA teams or EU teams get, I feel like this narrative just becomes bigger and bigger, which sucks because like NA teams and EU teams should be allowed to be successful without having this narrative like looming over them. Like now you are the West and you are here to destroy the East. Which also was another thing, like after G2 lost to FPX, people were like, oh no, what are we gonna do now? Like, oh, it's all for nothing, but at least G2 took down the Korean dynasty. Which is like, first of all, you could argue that LPL was the one, because RNG beat Kingzone at MSI, and then they just like kicked off the whole, like, taking over before they lost them to G2. But then G2 lost to IG, and IG won. But then it gets... I mean, personally, I feel like because an LPL team did it, it didn't feel as valuable as an EU or an NA team, even though an LPL team is not an LCK team. And they are not like the Korean overlords, so why didn't we hype that up? Instead, it was just like, okay, yeah, they beat them, cool. And then they move on.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. And I think, I mean, I feel like, again, you know, I often think of this like original sin that SKT created. I think this is like a very specific to the facts of what happened in League of Legends esports, which is that it is still very recent. In recent history, we had essentially this dominance by one team from one region interspliced with another team from the same region that incidentally plays nothing like, you know, SKT and Samsung. Either of the Samsung white or blue teams played nothing like SKT, but you know, that all together I think created this idea of the dynasty. So in some ways I am a little bit forgiving because recent history being what it is, like, you know, that idea of the Korean dynasty kind of looms large, unfortunately, in our head. And then of course like the Samsung win like didn't help, right? Because even though Samsung also doesn't, I mean, whatever. Anyway, whatever. But I do think it is odd because like I don't think we're treating this like, I mean, I think some people do, but it's not like we're talking about like the new LPL dynasty, even though IG and then FPX won, also both against LEC teams in the finals of Worlds. And I like, I don't want to keep harping on this, but there's also this element of where both Fnatic and G2 in the last 2 years have been very specific about trying to build around non-import players.
Right.
So I think that has like made that narrative like boost up a little bit, where it's like these two teams that are like local native talent going against two big LPL teams that both have imports. And like, I don't know, it just feels like this very like, well, we want to win to show that we have great native talent, which I want to support that about LEC. Like, I think that is great and I think that is something to celebrate, but why does it always feel like what they're trying to say is it's worth more, or it is like better because it's pure? What a terrible phrase.
Right, exactly. And it's just like, it's terrible, but I've actually seen people use it in a way
Have you really?
Yeah, like it's a pure roster, and it's like,
oh, God.
I don't know about that one, sir. And I feel like a lot of people, because once again, I don't think a lot of people think about this. Like, I don't think the broadcast thinks about, oh, we might just put up a quote-unquote racial division or whatever when we push our east-west agendas. I think they just do it because they think it's normal.
It's fun.
And it's fun. And it's a fun thing. And, you know, we're an English-speaking broadcast. NA speaks English. LEC, LCS, they both speak English. Obviously, we'll tie them together. But in the long run, it just causes this whole, like, we need to take down the Asians, basically.
Yes, yeah. On the margins, that's what it ends up sounding like. And, like, again, like, I think what Linda and I are both trying to say is, like, we don't think it's intentional. We don't think anybody's out there, like, trying to be racist.
Right,
but, like,
exactly.
Something about it feels that way. Anyway, now that we're appropriately uncomfortable, is there anything you'd like to recommend to our listeners in this off season?
God, do I have anything to recommend? I just watched.
Surely there's something.
I just watched a video of like when Doublelift looks at the iXmithy goodbye video, and he comments on it.
Oh yes.
Yeah, and I'm like, man, now I'm sad. How are our teams gonna survive next season, Cathy?
They're not.
Okay, good.
I mean,
good.
I'm very excited to see Broxa on Team Liquid. I want to put that out there.
That's true.
You know, I'm not like saying anything about Broxa. It is just sad because, as Doublelift talks about in that video, he and iXmithy have a really great record together, and they work really well together. And I think iXmithy is somebody that Doublelift really respects, both because of his in-game performance and just like the fact that they have been on all different, you know, iterations of Team Liquid and CLG together. So it will be sad because like that's a synergy that will be lost, even though it's not like jungle and like necessarily bot lane have that much synergy, but it is sad. Like, you know, Doublelift is losing somebody who's been around for a very long time,
right?
Just like we are.
And it's just, I don't know. I feel like it's going to be interesting because I feel like the LEC is doing a lot of shakeups. I do hope that there will be some team to kind of like, you know, fight G2 for their throne, because otherwise they're they're going to be a region where you have a top team and then you have the rest.
Yes.
Which kind of was NA in a sense.
Yes, but I will say that I think G2 was so much better than the other teams in LEC. Whereas I felt like even though TL had a 4-peat, I never really felt that they were like so much better the same way G2 was. So I think it is a little bit different. And I hope that we will have one more episode maybe after the rosters firm up a little bit more where we can talk about that.
Oh yeah, we pull our hair out at the roster changes and all of that. I'm just so annoyed at how LPL never announces anything until it's like they don't have a proper schedule. They just toss things out, or they just wait on the deadline.
Is there like a deadline? Is there a deadline for them?
I feel like the deadline is like when was the deadline? God, I mean, I feel like December. That's when all the bombs come out. But I mean, so far the biggest one is that Peanut's going to LGD, and you know, all the best to you, Peanut. I wish you the best of luck on LGD.
So you're gonna have to figure it out, and then we'll plan our episode for after that happens.
Okay.
So that we can actually do LPL, even though I'll know nothing. So it'll just be you for like 15 minutes,
and then we can be like play the game of where is Smeb.
Exactly. Who, you know, he's still MIA.
Yeah.
My recommendation is it pronounced like Shakarez? Yeah. Is that how he says his? Okay, so Shakarez did an amazing Twitter Moments collection, which he called Gamer Tweets.
Oh my god. Not that one.
It's so good. And so this is a topic that we haven't had a chance to talk about, and I put it on me, which is like our concept of like the scurvy scale. But the point is, he made this collection of tweets, and it's all about like gamers being bad at living. You know, like I don't like being bad at adulting/living. And so there's things like Pobelter's pancakes, which we all thought were chicken breasts until he described what they were, because they were just like weird and like wrinkly, and it was not how you make pancakes. Then there's that famous tweet with Biofrost where he like thought he put like toothpaste and like washed his hair with toothpaste.
Wait, I'm going through it right now, and there's like, this is from Overwatch though, from Super. Thought I bought toothpaste yesterday. Instead, I bought denture adhesive cream. Whoops.
Right. Yeah. So there's all these like amazing tweets that he's collected. I highly recommend you guys check out this collection. Like, it's just so funny because I think there are things that like I don't want to say that we've all done these things, but like they're like it just reminds you that at the end of the day, like these are people that we are paying like millions of dollars to because they're really good at pushing video game buttons, and they're like not very good at anything else. Like really anything else. Like
right.
Oh yeah, like the really great one, this is one of my favorites, the TSM myth one, where he didn't know that you had to buy like curtain rings, so he's just been like ramming the curtain pole through the holes, which is so funny. Like, as somebody who has bought a lot of curtain rings and like has cleaned, like, you know, been in a lot of bathrooms and have been responsible for furnishing a lot of bathrooms in my life, like this would never occur to me. So this is like a galaxy brain moment that like he didn't have curtain rings, and his solution was this thing.
And then
which is amazing.
When Deftly was like, is it possible to put sheets onto a blanket as one person? I can't do it. And I'm like, there's like, okay, so there's a series on YouTube from, I think the account is called Epicurious, and they have this series that's like 50 people try and like separate an egg, like the egg white and the yolk, or like 50 people try and crack a coconut. And it's so funny. And when I watch that, like sometimes you feel bad about yourself and your abilities in the world, and then you just look up these things and you're like, wow, I'm not that bad. I feel that way about gamers. I'm like, I'm not that bad.
And some of them I think are jokes. Like he has one from Poco, who is an Overwatch player, and he says like, is a green lime ever going to become a yellow lemon? Please respond. I think that's a joke, but that's also sure what's really amazing about these tweets is like, I'm not actually sure they are. Anyway, so just a little bit of lightness for the off season. It's an amazing collection. Everybody should.
Right. Please do read it and just feel better.
If you know any that are not in the collection, you can at Chakarez. He has been asking for contributions. Sadly, the originator of the scurvy scale is not a tweet. It is a post on the League of Legends forums. But that would have been my addition. Okay, well,
I hope people enjoyed this loaded episode. But
yeah, if you're still around after this, you know, you're really, truly one of us. If not, sorry to have offended. Although I don't think we actually said anything offensive.
We just said, hey, let's think about everyone. And someone's like, no, I'm not going to think about everyone. Reports our video.
Yeah, that's what's going to happen is our video is going to get reported for hate speech. But until then, Linda, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for always having me.
I'm sure I don't know when we'll have our next episode because I don't know whenever the LPL rosters drop after that we will have our episode. And if it doesn't seem like it's happening, it'll be sometime in December once everything has like calmed down a bit, and hopefully we'll just talk like state of the league for next year in rosters. So on behalf of Linda, who again is at iCrystalization on Twitter, this has been Pot of Ages. You can find us on SoundCloud/Pot of Ages. We're also on YouTube and on what's the other one? I'm thinking of Spotify. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you soon. Bye.
Bye.